This channel focuses on Africa and why the continent is the poorest in the world, despite its abundant natural resources. We believe that Africa is the poorest continent because Africans are lazy. We are not here to make anyone feel better or pretend that the continent is rich. Our responsibility is to tell the truth the way we see it, so that Africans can start taking action to build their continent. We conducted a survey with 100 participants, asking them to share their views on why they believe Africa is the poorest continent. Their responses were divided into two separate categories. On one hand, Africans hold their politicians responsible for the continent's poverty. On the other hand, Africans say there is a foreign conspiracy to keep the continent poor. This video will focus solely on the impact of African politicians on the continent's current situation. The participants believe that African politicians play a crucial role in the continent's underdevelopment. According to them, the primary reason why 80% of the continent's population lives on less than $6 a day is a leadership problem. What they implied is that if Africans can elect good politicians to lead the continent, wealth will follow. If only the politicians could do their jobs well, they say, the continent will magically become like the West. We disagree with the participants' point of view. Politicians and their activities have contributed to the continent's stagnation, but to a very minimal degree. In our opinion, the politicians' role is less than 15%. The responsibility of the continent and its progress rests in the hands of Africans themselves. The day they realize that will be the day the continent gains its independence. This is what Africans think their politicians are doing that contributes to Africa's underdevelopment. Their politicians mismanage the money from their natural resources. The continent has abundant natural resources, but its people are suffering. They embezzle public funds in corrupt schemes. The continent has a lot of money that ends up in the private pockets of politicians. The worst of it all is that this money is sent to rich countries for safekeeping, thus draining the continent of its riches. Africans say that their politicians don't create jobs. They say the main reason why African youths leave the continent is because its governments don't create jobs, and as a result, African talent moves to other countries in search of greener pastures. They don't build roads. Africa has the worst roads in the world. With all our natural resources, there is no excuse for the poor roads. Our politicians don't build hospitals, that is why they travel abroad for treatment. African leaders are not coming together. They say that if only Africa could unite and work together, the continent would be very prosperous. Africa does not have one voice, and as a result, its people are suffering. All the reasons presented above are valid and provide significant insight, however, they account for only about 10% to 15% of the factors contributing to the continent's poverty. This has led us to understand that Africans still do not fully grasp the reasons behind their continent's underdevelopment. Yes, our politicians mismanage our resources, but if that were true, who is to blame? Becoming a politician is not a gift from God, we vote them to power. If our best is to elect thieves to power, then we are directly responsible for the continent's poverty. Corruption in Africa is in the people, not just politicians. I have watched Africans stealing from their employers. The fact that the politicians we elect to power are corrupt tells the story. The only reason we think we are morally superior is that we are not in those positions. The government accounts for less than 30% of jobs created in most countries. In countries like Japan and Korea, the government employs less than 15% of the labor force. If that is the case, who provides the rest of the jobs? Africans would say it's God, because if there is anything I have noticed in us, we tend to apportion blame and run away from responsibility. We are ignoring the 70+% of jobs that the private sector could create, but we are focusing on the less than 30% that the government should provide. If Africans don't see how they can contribute to the construction of roads and even seaports, then you are not watching the work of the Dangote Group. How can they, when their major focus is on politicians and politics? The best hospitals and universities in the world are private. We should stop complaining and get to work. We can't because we are trained to depend on the politicians for everything. When Africans say Africa should unite, what they are saying is that the politicians should come together. Show me one African-owned company that has a presence in the whole continent. While most Africans say the African problem is leadership and foreign conspiracy, we think that the African people are the cause of Africa's underdevelopment. This is because Africa, the second largest continent in the world, produces just about $2.7 trillion worth of goods and services. This is just 2.5% of global output according to the IMF 2024 report. If we devote 50% of the time we use to talk politics towards production, the continent will be better than it is today. We are not saying governments do not have a role to play, what we mean is that their failure should not stop us from producing. It should not stop us from pursuing gains and profit, because there can be no innovation or development in an environment where people don't create for profit. Thank you for watching.